what's your individual story of waking up and deciding to do something?
Well, I think in my case it's just a matter of aesthetics. And yes?
What you're filming, because obviously you're getting on boats and you're filming from a boat. Or you film from a pier or you film from the shore, there's no problem, and you want to film the river. But if you're on a boat, the PLA want to know what you're doing. So unfortunately, that's the crack.
Nothing we could do.
No, that's it. Unfortunately, mate. You can apply for it, but it's not an overnight thing. You're gonna have to apply, apply to the rules.
Can you just do audio?
Yeah.
No. Not video. Just audio.
And when I met Max in 2003, he was telling me his stories of Wall Street. And at first I didn't really believe him because the bad guy was always the winner in all of his stories. Whereas in Hollywood we told stories where the bad guy always loses. So then I started to read his collection of finance and economics books, but also the Financial Times and The Economist, which I had never read before, even though I actually did study some economics at UCLA. But so I was reading these, and the Financial Times was talking about stories that Max had always talked about. And I would always constantly say, oh my God, you said that. You said that. You would be like, I know, I told you.
Is there a moment that sticks out to you that's most memorable doing this? Is there a victory or success or just something personal to you that you're proud of while doing this that occurred?
Well, the Karma Bank chapter, I think, stands out because it was an idea where you're using markets against markets, and it's an original idea. And the idea of encouraging people to boycott companies and then get hedge funds to sell short those companies to try to force the stock price down. And it was picked up by one activist group that ended up driving the price of Huntington Life Sciences, an animal research firm, down to zero. It's now being picked up by Anonymous. They have a group called Anonymous Analytics, and they are actively engaging now for hedge funds and for the financial community to sell short Corrections Corps of America, which is the biggest private prison operator. So I think looking back, that was one thing that stands out, because it encapsulates the idea of something aesthetically pleasing, aesthetically beautiful about markets and capitalism itself. There's an aesthetic about markets and free markets, of a balancing in that system. So here was a way for activists to use the economies of scale of their massive footprint, turn the forces back into the equation, and restore some balance. Unfortunately, the activists themselves were not open to this idea at the time, because the leaders of these groups, the biggest NGOs in the world, would tell me, well, we can't be associated with anything having to do with markets because it would alienate our donors. And they said, we understand what you're saying, we know it can work, but we're not radical enough to take that jump. So now I'm glad to see that Anonymous Analytics is picking up the ball. I think it's still a fantastic idea, and I think that's still, looking back over the past 10 years, that's something that will stand the test of time. It's a good idea. It makes sense. I hope more people embrace it. Well, this is the fabulous, other side of the Thames River. Here's the Belfast, which during World War II was actually responsible for transporting Britain's gold away from possible Nazi confiscation. So it has a bit of history in the gold world. And but this is kind of where we are now. This is a new developed part of London, so the mayor's office is here. Tower Bridge, of course, is over there. And they built this whole corporate kind of scene going on here. And it's quite nice, actually. So we just take the Thames Clipper, the commuter boat, up the river, as you saw. It takes about 15 minutes, and so we just get up next to the studio.
How was that transition from being a stand-up comedian into a TV news program about hard-hitting economic news?
Well, like I said in that Slate piece, the transition from doing, performing, as I was studying theater at New York University at the time, and so I was studying playwriting and Eugene O'Neill and the classics, Greek classics, and I was actually thinking of becoming a playwright, and then doing a lot of comedy as well, because I've always done comedy ever since I was a kid, and I did some stand-up performances, but the transition to Wall Street was an easy one, because Wall Street is a theater. It's a theater of the absurd in many ways. It's just a lot of stories being told. The ticker tape is essentially the theater in which everyone is working, and there's good guys and bad guys, and as far as selling securities to people, it's all about telling stories, getting people interested in the stories, and so it's an easy transition. I don't see any difference really. I think the biggest mistake people make about finance and economics is that they take it very seriously, and they think that there's an underlying economic theories, they think there's an efficient market, they think that people are taking rational risks, they think that there's a fairness, underlying fairness at this point, which is not true. It's all being made up on the fly. Laws and rules are being made up on the fly by banks like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. If they break current laws, they can very easily get new laws written, they can change laws. So they're just basically free-forming performers in a lot of ways. They're like Charlie Parker of finance, except instead of producing an aesthetic that we can appreciate as fine, they're really bad performance artists. They're just that's what I don't like about Lloyd Blankfein and Jamie Dimon, is that they're essentially ugly people. And I would prefer if there was more artistry in the theater of Wall Street. And so when I do Karma Bank or these other projects or this show, I'm restoring integrity to these free markets by giving some real theatrical classicism and aesthetic classicism and beauty to something that's been run roughshod by these sideshow clowns.
Overall in media, what do you think of independent media? Where do you see it going? And
how's it going?
hello.
Yeah, we're just on our way here. We're doing a little audio.
Yeah,
We're just on the way to the building.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to film any.
I know we're just doing some audio, and we're walking away now. We're just going to work.
Really?
We're going to work.
You're not allowed to be in this area.
Yeah, okay. We're just going to work. See you later.
Unbelievable.
I think I'm gonna walk around with this camera and just see what happens, because I know you guys have to go to work, but I would really like to talk to that gentleman.
Well,
Can you really not just film here? I mean, is that the law?
That's the law. It's like, because the Queen owns everything and everything is private here. This could be in the city right here as well, which is a corporation. So it's just unbelievable. It's like a pain in the ass, because we filmed everywhere for Al Jazeera, in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar, out right near the U.S. Military base. Never got stopped. Never ever any problem. Here you have this more of a dictatorial monarchy.
So how do you put the shows together?
Well, it's a bit of a well-oiled machine nowadays, where we, on a Wednesday, will record today's show and Friday's show. We've got a fairly small team working here at Flint Studios. Stacey will create all the elements, as you can see here, of the show, of the first show. Bring those in for us so we can turn the show around very quickly. We'll then go and record the show in two parts. I'll take you down to the studio in a moment. And then as soon as we've got the rushes from the two parts of the show, we come in, edit it, encode it, and send it straight off to rushes today. So it's a very quick turnaround. As soon as we've done the first show and that's gone up, we start work on the second show and get that done. So we get all 3 episodes shot in 2 days. So all I'm doing at the moment is just setting up, getting things ready. And while that renders, why don't we go down to the studio and we'll show you how we set that up.
Great. So I was wondering, since you've been working with Max and Stacey for a while, how have you seen things develop?
Strangely enough, I don't think, all that's developed is the audience has grown and the perspective of Max has changed. Max himself and Stacey have been saying pretty much the same thing all the way along. They haven't changed their perspective. They've been saying, they've been coming from the same perspective from day one. When I met them, they were saying exactly what they're saying now. The difference was fewer people were listening to them. I think people were quite cautious of their the narrative that they were coming out with. Here's the studio, by the way. Calamar sound man. I'll take you into the studio we're actually working at the moment. As you can see, it's a very simple set. It's just the London backdrop. Yeah. I mean, this show's all about the content, really. It's about what Max and Stacey are saying. It's not about flashy sets or anything like that. It's quite simple. I'll take you through to the gallery while these boys get set up. And you can come back and do some more. This is Jojo, who's basically technical guru behind the scenes, who's been with us since
for a few episodes.
Yeah, the Rush Today since it's been in London. Jojo, like me, goes off and edits, so we basically share the editing work afterwards. Once we've recorded it, so we'll do sound, cameras, whatever's needed, but then we'll get in. So we're kind of like the core element of the team.
Yeah. You try and keep it together.
Yes, exactly that. At the moment, there's never been an episode where one of us hasn't been on it.
Yeah, right, that's probably going to happen at some point. Who knows? Right, so yeah, Max Keiser. Well, he is the man. What can I say?
Well, where's our guest? It's a long process to get indoors. Oh, here he is.
Hey, how are you?
This is our cameraman.
Hey.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. I bought cookies for everybody.
All right.
Chocolate chip, they're awesome.
Nothing but the best here.
How's everything going? Hey, Max.
What's happening?
How's everything going?
This is Mitch Feierstein.
I've got my unicorn tie on here.
Oh, that's good. We can talk about that. And then, of course, Mitch wrote the famous book Planet Ponzi.
Here's your questions.
Here's my questions. Yeah, I'm
Oh
ready
my
to go.
God.
Let's go. So I'm ready on the
Going back to what I was saying before, I feel that the broadcast market is shifting. The media is moving. Nothing's changed in what Max and Stacey have done, but and I don't think anything's changed in the viewing public either. I think there's always been a demand for this sort of programming. There's always been a demand for people who want to know the truth and not just what's generally broadcast on the mainstream broadcasters like the BBCs of this world. And the longer that Max and Stacey have just kept plugging away, saying exactly what they've always said and revealing the sort of things that they've been doing, the more the mainstream media can't ignore them, and they've realised that they've got a very valid viewpoint, especially after so many years. So much of this stuff has come true. I mean, after all the documentaries went out on Al Jazeera, the BBC saw the truth behind it. Most of what Max was saying, and gave us a show on BBC World called The Oracle, which was testament to the fact that the mainstream were coming on board. Now Max back in London, he makes regular appearances on Newsnight. He's on the Politics Show this week. Although his view is still perceived in the mainstream as alternative, they can't ignore it anymore. Yeah.
All right, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Mitch Feierstein of PlanetPonzi.com. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.
How can the American public trust you when you engineer? What do you think is the greatest crime economically committed in recent history right now? If you can name one event, one action, what is it?
It's the utter abandonment of